Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Dr. Andrew Neville, and welcome to our Q&A, our live Q&A that we're doing on a couple platforms here. We're going to be talking about adrenal fatigue and all that it is, all that it isn't. Talk about all the incredible misconceptions that are out there about adrenal fatigue. It's connected to a lot of different conditions. Some you might not even be aware of. Certainly a bunch of symptoms that can come from it. We'll talk about the dispute over whether it even exists. I'm pretty sure it exists since I've been specializing in treating it. And when we do treat it, people tend to get their lives back after a while. So I'm pretty sure it exists. So we're gonna get into it in just a minute. So I just want to hear from my team that we are good on our platforms. Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Suzanne. And a little housekeeping first before we jump in. So as you do join in, welcome, and please let us know where you're from. We're always curious. We've got international programs. I've got patients all over the country. So we'd like to hear where you're from. If you have any questions, by all means, put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those as well. I do have this list of questions that people have submitted already. It's a pretty good list. It always seems like there's a fair amount of questions with regard to this. So I'll do everything I can to get through those lists. Also, I am not your doctor, so this conversation does not equate to a doctor-patient relationship. This is for informational purposes only. Any changes in your treatment program or plan, please go back to your provider and have that discussion with them. That said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I will do everything I can to answer your questions as thoroughly as I can. Although I do have to talk a little faster than I tend to like to, given the volume of questions that we have. Now, if you are a current patient of mine, either in my Core Plus program that's run by my coaches or my Healing Transformation program that I still manage, welcome. Like to have you here. Glad to have you here. Listen, learn. It's good to hear this information over and over and over again. It's nice to hear other, questions from other people to understand. However, this Q&A is much more for the public, so I'm going to prioritize the questions from the public. If you have a question, you can submit it. We'll get it on the list, and if I have time at the end, I'll try to get those. But if you have specific questions, right, questions that are targeted towards you specifically, best way to get that answered is to chat in through our platform, get in front of the coaches, or bring your conversation to me directly if you're in my program at one of our group sessions. Okay. If you've been out of touch for a while, maybe you're just revisiting and coming back into contact with us, welcome back. Reach out if you have any specific questions. I've got patient coordinators who will offer a free, so we've got a complimentary call with them to answer some questions, see if we're a fit for each other, figure out which way to go, that kind of a thing. And I will, make mention of my, the programs that I have here and there moving forward. So again, no matter what platform you are on, welcome, and let us know where you're from. We're curious. If you have any questions, put them into the comments and we'll get them on our sheet. We'll get into it. All right. Okay. So Kat says, do you consider adrenal fatigue as a primary medical issue, or can it be secondary to another primary condition? And is treatment different if it's primary or not? Is healing different as well? That's a great question, Kat. I appreciate that question. So adrenal fatigue is connected to so many underlying issues. And there is this somewhat of a controversy or a conversation that I'll have with other practitioners of the fact that, my Lyme disease caused my adrenal fatigue, my mold illness caused my adrenal fatigue, my Epstein-Barr or my hypothyroid problem or my hormones caused my adrenal fatigue. And I think of it the other way around. So the first thing to understand is that adrenal fatigue is much bigger than a problem just with your adrenals. It's actually a problem with your entire stress response system. And that involves your adrenals. They're the end organ that ultimately produces the stress hormones that we're familiar with, the cortisol, the adrenaline. But the adrenals only do what they're told. And yes, that cortisol and adrenaline, it wreaks havoc on the body. I mean, it's awesome. It'll save your life. It'll help give you energy to pick a car up off your child if you need to, right? It's life-saving. But when you release too much of it over time, it can cause some pretty debilitating symptoms, right? Thing is, the adrenals don't decide whether to do that, right? So somebody tells them what to do. So we have to look at the bigger picture as to who tells the adrenals what to do. So we've got the HPA axis, right? So the hypothalamus pituitary telling the adrenals what to do. That's the hormone side of your stress response system. We've got the nerve side of your stress response system, which is your autonomic nervous system, the part of the nervous system that basically controls all of your organs. Involuntarily just controls all your organs, how fast your heart beats, pupils dilating, sweating, all that kind of stuff, and every other organ. Those two systems are both controlled by this limbic system in the brain, which is the decision maker. And what that limbic system has to do is decide whether a stimulus in your internal environment or external environment, is that stimulus harmful, dangerous? Can this thing kill me? Do I got to jump this body into fight or flight? Hormones, nerves. Or is it harmless and innocuous and I can just chill out in vacation mode, in mellow mode, and just let it pass? So what happens is, with a bit of a genetic predisposition and then just enough chronic stress over time to overwhelm those genetics, that limbic system actually gets trigger happy, starts to overinterpret its environment as dangerous, and our bodies get stuck in fight or flight. What happens then? So this is a primary condition is what I'm talking to you about, Kat. The adrenals are primary because when our body is stuck in fight or flight, you're going to release excess cortisol and adrenaline in the beginning. Again, temporarily it's great, but do it all the time. And there's tremendous wear and tear on the body that comes from that, which leads to symptoms like fatigue, pain, weight, brain fog, insomnia, anxiety, depression, blood sugar problems, and blood pressure problems. Low at first, and then they can go high. All of those directly related to excess cortisol and adrenaline. Well, at the same time, when your body's in fight or flight, your body purposely turns off some other organs that are not so important when there's a tiger in front of you, per se. 4 main organs: immune, digestive, reproductive, thyroid. And we know that is well documented in the research, and it makes perfect sense too. There's a tiger in front of you. Don't waste energy fighting some chronic infection, right? And hence vulnerability to Epstein-Barr, other viruses, HHV6, CMV, parvovirus, mycoplasma, Lyme, Candida, you name it, right? All these chronic viruses. That immune system shift also causes allergies, sensitivities to things, right? So we see environmental allergies, hay fever, we see food allergies, even allergies to your body's own tissue. And depending on the joint or the thyroid or the skin, depending on what tissue it hits, we call it rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Hashimoto's, whatever it may be. So again, primary dysfunction that actually sets people up for autoimmune disease. Well, my autoimmune disease is causing pain and that's causing adrenal stress on the adrenals. And it is. But the reason you have the autoimmune disease in the first place is that adrenal fatigue, that body's stuck in stress physiology. Same thing with the gut, right? We're stressed out that there's a tiger in front of you. The body knows now's not a good time to sit down to a meal. Now's not a good time to sit down and have a bowel movement, right? You're going to be dead, right? So we're going to shut that stuff down temporarily, deal with the tiger, then turn it back on, do it all the time. Now you got indigestion, heartburn, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. We've got IBS, inflammatory bowel, leaky gut, malabsorption, all kinds of things. Again, SIBO, because of the adrenal fatigue, because of that stress response system dysfunction. Does SIBO cause the adrenal fatigue? No. I have flat out ignored SIBO in my patients at times, shifted this physiology, and have never had to chase after any of those bugs again. It's just a fancy term for a special kind of dysbiosis. Same thing goes with the reproductive hormones. ovaries, the testes. The body purposely shuts those down, as well as the thyroid. So yes, you may have Hashimoto's, and everybody says, which comes first? It's a chicken and egg conversation. No, it is not. It is not. Because we know that with stress physiology, that excess cortisol goes to the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid hormone axis and suppresses it. The thyroid does not come first. The thyroid is just easier. It's easier. Doctors will recognize that thyroid problem, even subtle. Hey, you're a little tired. Your thyroid's a little off. Let's crank up this engine of your body, right? And that's reasonable. But if you crank up the engine and you don't have the oil, as far as the adrenals go, to sustain that, you might feel better temporarily, but you're risking a crash. So this underlying adrenal problem is so tremendously important and critical at a causal level. And the way to see, is this a primary condition or is it a secondary condition? Ask one more why. That's it. Ask one more why. Well, doc, my practitioner says it's my Epstein-Barr. All right. Well, why is Epstein-Barr a problem for you and not for the other 95% of the country that also has been exposed to Epstein-Barr? Why does yours reactivate? Why did mine reactivate? Why? Right? Why? So my immune system must not be strong enough to keep Epstein-Barr at bay. Epstein-Barr is a herpes virus. It never leaves our body. You will never fully eradicate it. Anybody that tries to tell you that that's their efforts is wasting your time and money. You will never fully eradicate a herpes family virus. It stays with you forever. But as long as your immune system's strong enough, you'll keep it at bay, right? Okay, so my immune system must be weak. It's allowing my Epstein-Barr to reactivate. Well, why? What controls the immune system? Stress physiology. Stress physiology. We know very well that when the body is under stress, that stress physiology goes to the immune system, shifts it, weakens it, and all of a sudden, these viruses flare. You can treat those viruses till the cows come home, and you will have to do that forever. And maybe you get a little benefit from it. Boy, it's a whole lot easier just to stop suppressing your immune system, let your body do it, and then go live your life. That's the goal. Chasing after these secondary conditions, all the gut stuff, all the hormone stuff, right? Chasing after those secondary conditions while your body is purposely suppressing them because of this adrenal fatigue, broken stress response. It's like trying to push a car that has the parking brake engaged. You get enough behind her, you get her to go, right? But it's a whole lot easier to release that brake over time. All right, maybe not a whole lot easier. This is the low-hanging fruit. It's easier to do this. Take some supplements for this. Hey, take these fancy probiotics. Take this immune support. Take all these herbs for your immune system. Take these hormones. That's definitely easier, but much more effective to release that brake, shift this physiology, bring this back into balance, go live your life, and honestly stay away from as many doctors as you can, including me. Okay, well, my team hasn't yelled at me yet for that long-winded answer, but I'm sure it's there. Okay, Misha says, I recently found out I have high blood pressure. After doing some reading, I realized many of the symptoms I've been attributing to adrenal fatigue also correlate to high blood pressure. Did one cause or contribute to the other, or are they separate? Now I'm wondering if I have adrenal fatigue at all. It's confusing because blah, blah, blah. I get it. So let's pay attention. Let's ask one more why. You have high blood pressure. 95% of high blood pressure in this country is something we refer to as essential hypertension. And guess what? They don't know what that word essential means as far as why is your blood pressure high. Most of the time, it's because of tight blood vessels, right? The blood vessels are too tight in the periphery, right? Too tense. Now the heart has to pump against a narrower tube and that blood pressure goes up. Okay? Ask one more why. Why are my blood vessels too tense, right? Well, guess what? That's going to go to your autonomic nervous system, especially cortisol and adrenaline too. Okay, so it's both. The hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, they're vasoconstrictors. They tighten blood vessels, and they do it on purpose, right? As soon as there's a tiger, tighten the blood vessels, funnel all the blood into your core just in case you get injured so you don't bleed out, right? The body does that stuff on purpose. What also happens is the autonomic nervous system side of your stress response kicks in. That causes a release of adrenaline at the blood vessels, and those are wires. That happens instantaneously. Boom. Constrict those blood vessels, and it does the same thing, right? Which is important. Temporarily, it's important. Do that too often, too much over time, and eventually those blood vessels can stiffen, and that can be a problem in and of itself, and now you have chronically high blood pressure. So usually the blood pressure in my patients starts out low, and eventually it can go high. So again, the question is, why? Unless you have some weird kidney issue or some blockage somewhere, which is incredibly rare. Again, 95% of the country is dealing with blood pressure as a result of what I just said. So with regard to adrenal fatigue, I usually say, like, you look at the symptoms, right? And it's not that I ignore the symptoms, like you were saying. Like, we got to pay attention to the symptoms. Just don't chase them. Look at the symptoms. And if it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, we kind of know what we're dealing with. I have a symptom assessment tool on my website. It's the easiest way to know what's going on, right? 4 or 5 minutes, answer these questions. It'll spit out the likelihood or not that you may have adrenal issues. So you can't just look at one symptom. You've got to look at the rest of the symptoms. And if we dig into PhD level research and we look at high blood pressure, we look at cardiovascular disease, any doctor worth their salt is going to look at that research and say, yeah, stress causes that. So the problem is, what do we do with this stress? Okay, yeah, you want to try to minimize the stress, but what if your stress response system is broken and now you're overinterpreting your life and your environment is stressful? Now you're going to get stuck. Well, you can unstuck that. That's the key, Misha. You can fix that. You can fix that. Don't accept a diagnosis as something that's unchangeable. Same thing with autoimmune disease, right? Doctors, they don't know how to deal with autoimmune disease. It's, your immune system's crazy. Let's just give you immunosuppressive drugs and steroids and suppress it. But why? Why is the immune system going crazy? What controls the immune system? It goes back to this physiology. It is so well documented. The problem is, it's documented up in this PhD level literature, which never trickles down to conventional doctors, so they don't know what to do about it, except for chase after symptoms or chase after secondary issues. Now, Misha, you can also reach out, give us a call. So reach out in the comments. We've got a patient coordinator. You get a complimentary call, have a conversation about this, about the breadth of it, and see if that makes sense to you. I know there's a lot to it, and I wish it wasn't so confusing, but good luck. Okay, so Razan says, can you explain if it's the hormone side or the nervous system side that causes anxiety and depression? I struggle with these. Next, I feel up and down. Okay. No, Roseanne, because they're connected. They're connected. I tease these apart, right? And I do it for educational purposes because, hormones are different than nerves. The symptoms might be a titch different. The treatments might be a titch different as well, but they are intimately connected. You cannot trigger one without triggering the other, and vice versa, which is why in the programs that we do, we tackle all of it. Because you'll have doctors out there, I specialize in adrenal fatigue, and that's all they focus on. And they're right, but not only. And then you'll have doctors that recognize, hey, you have dysautonomia, your autonomic nervous system's a little out of whack, and they're right too, but not only. And then there's a handful of doctors, they specialize in the brain. Right? Oh, your limbic system's cranked up. Look at the amygdala. We've got to retrain it and organize. And you're right too, but not only. So the most effective way to treat this condition is to treat it as a system, as the system that it is. Because these parts of this system, they all work together. Right? So my recommendations to treating the HPA axis, they're going to affect the autonomics and vice versa. And we need to do that. And the way we do that, the way we get this physiology to shift, because it can shift, it doesn't matter how long it's been there, is to put enough of the pieces of your puzzle. Everybody's puzzle is a little different. Put enough of the pieces of your puzzle together with relation to this fulcrum that governs this physiology, which is spring-loaded towards fight or flight. That's human nature, right? Survival mode. We're good at it. Spring-loaded towards fight or flight, and it's been there so long. For most of us, it's rusted, right? So it's stuck. We got to target that, figure out what that puzzle looks like, put enough of those pieces of the puzzle together all at the same time, and that's what gets this physiology to start to shift. That's what heals you. Because as that happens, all the symptoms from stress physiology, they just start to decrease in intensity, frequency, and duration over time. And at the same time, you're turning off the wear and tear that comes from stress physiology, you're turning on the healing and repair side of your physiology. Our bodies know how to heal. They've been doing it for thousands of years, but they're not going to do it if we don't turn on that side of our physiology. It's a relatively simple concept, right? I mean, easier said than done for sure, but there are ways to do it. And if you've got questions, I get it. It gets murky and it gets confusing. And that's why I'm so busy, I guess is why. Because there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot to it. And you don't have to know all this stuff to get well, but you better have a doctor that knows it. Because if you know it, you can fix it. So my recommendation, if you have more questions, just reach out. Complimentary call. Talk to my patient coordinator. Christine, my main patient coordinator, she is the most compassionate person. She has talked to hundreds and thousands of people, just like you. She'll listen, right? She'll listen and she cares, and she'll help you understand kind of what's going on, and better yet, help to guide you, with regard to what to do about it. Okay? All right. All my best. Okay, Sarah says, I have been diagnosed with adrenal fatigue and I'm taking 5-HTP among other supplements. Does 5-HTP increase cortisol levels, subsequently elevating anxiety? No. So for everybody, 5-HTP is a precursor to serotonin. Serotonin is one of your neurotransmitters. It's one of your calming neurotransmitters, kind of like GABA. I used to actually measure neurotransmitter levels in patients, but I stopped years ago because the patterns all look the same. So I'm not going to do a test and spend somebody's money if I know what the results are going to be anyway, right? And what are the patterns? Well, with stress physiology, it's like your body has, its foot to the floor. Like you are cranked on the accelerator in your body, 100 miles an hour. And the body tries to use the brakes. It knows that's dangerous. It tries to use the brakes to slow this thing down. Generally, our inhibitory neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, glycine. Problem is, nothing trumps the stress response. Nothing. If we could turn it off, we all would have died out thousands of years ago. Nothing trumps the stress response. So what happens, though, is the body tries, hits the brakes, but we still got our foot to the floor. So eventually the serotonin and GABA all come down, right? I think a better intervention, and what I do is I just try to get your foot off the floor, right? Off the accelerator and allow this physiology to shift. And then those neurotransmitters balance out on their own. Those neurotransmitters are what conventional doctors will chase after with this condition. Oh, you have depression? Here, take something that bumps up your serotonin, right? You have anxiety, take something that bumps up your GABA or serotonin or whatever, right? That's all they have. There are also practitioners out there that we refer to as green allopaths. Allopaths are like conventional doctors. They do it green. They're just nicer about it, right? Same paradigm, though. You have depression. It's a serotonin thing. I'm not going to give you Prozac. I'm going to give you tryptophan or 5-HTP. It's the same concept, right? The problem is the concept's wrong. The concept's wrong. You may or may not have issues with your serotonin, but the biggest problem is you got to get your foot off the accelerator. That's what allows that physiology to shift. But does 5-HTP, does increasing serotonin increase cortisol levels or anything? No. However, I will say, Those of us with this condition, we tend to be on the sensitive side. So in my practice, I'm always making one change at a time, right? And I've learned that just about anything can cause anything in my sensitive patients. And if anything overstimulates you, more anxiety, worse sleep, jitters, or whatever, if anything overstimulates you, it's not right for you at that time. So I would encourage you to listen to your body, okay? Maria says, how long to heal from adrenal fatigue? Well, Maria, that depends. And it depends on so many things, so many things. It depends on, all right, so conceptually, this is what we have to do. To heal adrenal fatigue, here's what we got to do. Your physiology is here, you have adrenal fatigue, we got to shift it. How do we shift it? We got to create space in your bucket. There's 3 ways to create space. Scoop some stuff out, right? Your bucket's too full for whatever reason. Scoop whatever you can out. And let's learn how to poke as many holes in that bucket as we can as well, so that as stress comes your way, which it's going to, let's let it flow right through so it doesn't accumulate, right? And what we also want to do is we want to expand your bucket to your greatest genetic capacity. Now, you do that by healing the broken stress response, the hormones, the nerves, the limbic system, and the brain. All 3 of those actions create space in the bucket. Now there's tolerance to your world. Now you can shift this physiologic seesaw. You can turn off the wear and tear and turn on the healing and repair side of your body. How long and how effective can you scoop stuff out of your bucket, right? How good are you at poking holes in your bucket? And how good is the person in front of you, me sometimes, at fixing this broken stress response system? This is all we do. This is all I've done for my professional career since I came out of med school. This is all I've done is focus on adrenal fatigue, because I was suffering from it too, and nobody figured my stuff out either. And if I sound a little bitter about that, I mean, I'm in the best naturopathic medical school in the country, and I'm going to these doctors like, look, I've got anxiety, I've got IBS, I've got issues. They're like, well, it's your candida, it's your food allergies, it's your anxiety. Here, let's talk to a therapist. It's your Epstein-Barr that keeps flaring, right? They were still chasing after all this secondary stuff. It wasn't until I found my predecessor's book, Dr. Posnecker, I found his book in the library at Bastyr. It changed my life. Finally, there was a description of the entirety of what I was dealing with. Now I know what's going wrong, and now I know how to fix it. So I get that it's frustrating. I get it. And it takes a while. It took me a while. I was in med school. My wife and I had our first child. Then I was doing residency, right, as I'm trying to heal. So it took a little bit, but it's absolutely fixable. Some get better faster. Sometimes it takes a little while longer, but you can do it. That's the key. And good luck. Okay, Laura says, aside from strengthening the vagus nerve, what else is helpful in balancing adrenaline? Sarah Foss, question mark. Okay, so adrenaline comes from 2 primary places. The first place is from the adrenals. So we talk about the adrenals producing cortisol. That's the main stress hormone from the adrenal cortex. The outer portion is like a baseball. The cover is the cortex. That's what produces cortisol, DHEA, stuff like that. There's an inner core of your adrenal gland that is almost a different organ completely. It's not responsive to the HPA axis and the hormones. It's actually responsive to the autonomic nervous system. And there's a nerve that goes to the adrenal medulla that produces adrenaline. Here, trigger a bunch of adrenaline. Adrenaline also is used at the very end of the nerve endings of that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system that reaches every organ in our body. It just spurts out a little adrenaline, right? Here and there. Okay, so that's where it comes from. Strengthening the vagus nerve, right? Which is great. Lauren knows the way we strengthen the vagus nerve. That's the main parasympathetic nerve, the main rest and digest nerve. And this is an inverse relationship. So if you turn on that vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetics come down, fight or flight calms down, lower adrenaline, right? Smart, do it. Serophos, Lauren mentioned, is a little different. Serophos works on the HPA axis. So primarily the hormone side of things. So it's not as much going to get to adrenaline as it is going to get to cortisol. But even the hypothalamic stress hormone, there's something called CRH, comes from the hypothalamus, which stimulates the pituitary to release ACTH. And those have roles in and of themselves. Aside from cortisol, those things dance around in the brain and keep us all hypervigilant as well. That's what Serophos more so works on. So controlling, and we do want to control adrenaline and cortisol, and you want to control it. You don't want to suppress it. You don't want to, you want to improve the body's fine-tuning mechanisms to get this to shift. And honestly, Lauren, the way we do it is to figure out what the pieces of your puzzle look like, right, to get this to come into balance, which is going to include mindfulness, right? It's going to include, meditation, some breath work. It's going to include scooping some stuff out of the bucket. It's going to include avoiding toxins. It's going to include, using some things to balance out the limbic system in the brain and get that less and less trigger happy. So it's really a combination of a variety of things. There's no magic bullet that shuts off adrenaline, but you can do it. Just got to bring it back into balance. Okay. Sandra says, can I please ask about sodium? I understand that electrolytes are important for the body, but I'm concerned about my sodium being a bit high. I think I need to get a test done, but can I please ask how? Okay. So your adrenals control your sodium-potassium balance through a hormone called aldosterone. And welcome, everybody. Sorry, I should kind of stop midway. Tell us who you are and where you're from in the comments. We're always curious to hear where you are, where you're from. And if you have a question, throw it out to us. I'll try to get to them. I'm behind on all my questions, so I will do everything I can. And I guess I'll take a moment to say now, because of the interest in this conversation and conversations like this, we're in the process of creating a membership program. And we think we're going to launch this probably on YouTube and do some sort of Q&As where I can slow down and give a little more of an in-depth question, a place where you can more so be guaranteed to have your question answered. So keep a heads up. So if you go to YouTube and you like and subscribe and turn on notifications, we'll let you know when that's all going to happen. So by all means do that. And if you appreciate the information, I mean, we do this to dispel some of the misinformation, to get some questions, to answer some questions as best we can, just to help inform. And if you appreciate that, then share it, right? Share it, suggest it, like it. That helps. It helps us extend our reach. And thank you if you do that. Okay, so Sandra's asking about sodium, potassium. Aldosterone, a different adrenal hormone, helps to balance our sodium, potassium, and it is a balance, right? Because it depends on what stage of adrenal fatigue you're in, whether you need more sodium or more potassium, right? And that varies. So that's why testing comes in, and testing is important. I'm not talking about sodium testing. I'm talking about adrenal testing, right? Saliva testing. You can get sodium and potassium levels in a regular CMP, right? A complete metabolic panel, which is going to get you some electrolytes, right? That'll tell you where your sodium is. Typical range is 135 to 145. Optimal is more like above 140, right? If you're concerned that it's high, get it tested. Chances are it's not. And again, it depends on what stage of adrenal fatigue you're in as to what you may need. Do you need more potassium? Do you need more sodium? I will share that most of my patients need a little more sodium than they do potassium. But again, that just depends on, it depends on the stage. And these are your two primary electrolytes, incredibly important for so many reasons. You can look at levels, but you can also look at the symptoms that come from low sodium, which are frequent urination, lightheadedness, If you stand up too quick, you get lightheaded. It's all about blood volume, right? Because if you can't hold on to salt, you can't hold on to water. Blood volume is mostly water, right? Lightheaded, can't hold on to water, you just pee it out. Or really any sign of dehydration. All these are connected to low sodium levels. And when you're managing and you're dealing with the salt, you want to do it cautiously, right? They're not completely wrong when they say, oh, you're taking in too much sodium. All the sodium that's in all that processed food, that's garbage. That's not good for you, right? It's foreign to your body. The salt, the sodium chloride, that pure crystalline white stuff in your salt shaker, well, that's not good for you either. But an unrefined sea salt is better, but it is still sodium, right? So you want to respect it and be somewhat cautious with it, but don't be worried about it. We need sodium. It's one of the most basic minerals in our body. It's incredibly important. And unfortunately, it's been villainized, right? By same thing with cholesterol. Like, oh my gosh, cholesterol. Well, guess what? Every stress hormone I just talked about, they're all made from cholesterol. You better have cholesterol. In fact, the number one reason cholesterol goes up is stress. They don't tell you about that, right? No, just here, take this medication to lower your cholesterol. All right, so I'm gonna leave it at that. All right. KS. Hi, Dr. Neville. Curious for any suggestions for someone experiencing both adrenal fatigue and candida. Like me back in the day, I should say, I can't do candida diet because I can't go without carbs. But carbs also make me feel bad. Yeah, so treat the reason, like treat the why, right? Why do you have candida? Just about all my patients have candida. Why? Shift this physiology, suppress your immune system, suppress your digestion, and there are numerous reasons as to why you just created this perfect environment for candida overgrowth. And I can't get into all of them, although head over to my YouTube channel. I'm sure I did somewhere there. So while I acknowledge that candida is a problem and it's a little bit of a stress on the body, the big way to treat candida is to shift that physiology, stop suppressing those organ systems, and then you don't have to deal with the candida anymore. Same thing. I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. Now, if you're going to mildly treat candida, which I just try to make it uncomfortable for candida to hang around, right? Be somewhat cautious with the carbs. Right? Take the carbs down a little, but you got to make sure you replace the carbs with something, right? You need some fat, right? Because your body needs fuel. Right? You got to have some fuel. And sometimes that's a slow transitioning from carb burning to fat burning, right? Take your time, listen to your body. Candida thrives on sugar and carbs, so drop it down. Sometimes a probiotic, right? Or fermented foods or something like that. A little coconut oil. Coconut oil has some medium chain triglycerides, like caprylic acid. Those are directly antifungal. So I increase coconut oil in the body. But the big thing is treat the why, right? Treat the cause. So Angie says, is there a concern with quercetin lowering glutathione? I don't have that concern, Angie. I mean, I use quercetin fairly regularly in my practice. I don't see it lowering glutathione levels. Glutathione is one of these major antioxidants in our body, very important. All our antioxidants get depleted. Quercetin is one heck of a natural antihistamine. It's one of my favorites, so I will use it at times. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that dysfunction, that problem. The body knows how to make glutathione. It just needs those amino acids and enough proteins and things like that to be able to make it. And here's the thing: like when glutathione's a repair molecule, right? It helps with detox. It's an antioxidant, right? Even the immune system. But your body's not going to be concerned with making glutathione if it thinks there's a tiger in front of us. So the key to creating all of these healing and repair molecules is getting our body out of stress physiology. That's really the key. So you got to do that. But no concern, of course, in that way. Ben says, what and where is the best place to begin if you are on a very tight budget and have little or no extra income left over? Yeah, I hate that, Ben. I hate that. I mean, I have two primary programs that I use. One's with me and one's with my coaches. and they both cost money because it takes work. It takes work. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes some expertise. Like I've had to spend, not had to. I love spending time with my coaches, but educating my coaches. I mean, it takes a while to get this information out and understood, which is why it costs some money. One place I will tell you to go is my Facebook group. So if you're not on Facebook yet, I have a Facebook group called Healing Adrenal Fatigue Holistically, which is phenomenal. So I got moderators on there. You can ask questions on there. You can get support. There are guides on there with kind of introductory information about, where to start, what to pay attention to, what to let go of. It offers some support. So it's a great place, free. So it's complimentary. You can go there. I do have a core program as well that we're just in the process of revamping a little bit. We're going to be kind of working on this, which is information, right? So it's more information only. So if anybody is like self-motivated or is kind of taxed with, challenged financially, that would be the place to go. So you can reach out. It's called Core. So you can reach out about that and we can get you information about that. But stick around. Go to my YouTube channel. Tons of information with regard to this stuff. Although it is challenging, right? It is challenging to do it on your own. It takes some wherewithal, and it can be hard to put this puzzle together for everybody, right? And thing is, I went to school to put these puzzles together, right? I studied under a puzzle master, right, during my residency, where we worked on putting these puzzles together. And for the past 23 years, I've put thousands of these puzzles together. So we've just gotten a little, better at it. That's all. But you can still heal. So hang in there. Okay. Dawn says, how are adrenal fatigue and autoimmune different? I have morphia, which is localized scleroderma that causes swelling in my legs, excess joint pain, ankles, and knees. Okay. So earlier, I'm going to do this quick, Dawn, because I talked about it a little bit. Autoimmune disease is an out-of-control immune system. The number one cause of the immune system being out of control is stress physiology, right? So it causes a shift in the immune system where the immune system starts attacking its own tissue. That's what has to be dealt with. So I would suggest that the underlying cause of your autoimmune disease is quite likely this adrenal fatigue or this broken stress response physiology. And the way to know, go to my website, check out the symptom assessment tool, right? 4 or 5 minutes, go through that, and it'll tell you, the likelihood as to whether or not you have adrenal issues. Because you can fix autoimmune disease. You can fix it, but not the way everybody's talking about it. Not by changing your diet, believe it or not, right? And I work with diets with all my patients. Food's important, right? Food is medicine. But it's not some special diet. It's not, not even focusing on the immune system. The big thing is fixing that underlying cause. That's really the key. Okay. All right. I'm getting a nudge to speed up. Chris says a lot. Cortisol, DHEA, thyroid, levo, thyroid glandular, bioregulator. I don't know what a bioregulator is. We have all kinds of names. Possible viral infection. Do you know of any other patient that has been on more of a holistic approach for hypothyroidism? Okay, so here's the thing. Your thyroid doesn't have a shot if your adrenals are dysfunctional. That's the biggest thing, right? And so that's first and foremost. Like I'm almost always going to treat the adrenals first before I get after the thyroid. Now, thyroid's easier. So most of my patients are already treated for their thyroid by the time they come into me. So I just try to help them or ask them to remain stable on whatever their treatment is, whether that's levo or synthetic T4, or if it's a natural glandular or something like that. I don't know what happened, but it sounded like that transition or whatever you did there wasn't the right transition. The key is you've got to go slowly. There are some thyroid glandulars that are strong enough to be able to move the needle as far as thyroid hormone levels. You can do that. But you gotta you gotta look at this a little more globally. So if you have adrenal fatigue, that's what I would focus on first and foremost. And then you can get to stabilizing the thyroid. All my best. Let's see. Francis says, could you address the role of antidepressants to help calm ruminating while the HPA axis is being addressed? Yeah, so conventional medicine, right, that's how they treat stress, antidepressants, right? And sometimes they think it's depression, but sometimes they just think they're stressed out, and this is what I was taught to use is these antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds. They do play a role and can be temporarily helpful. But that's the thing, temporarily. What you can't do is you can't kid yourself and think you just fixed the problem just because somebody's a little calmer. You just put a Band-Aid over that thing. And that's okay, right? We need a Band-Aid, right? But you've got to fix the underlying problem. So that medication, and a lot of my patients are treated with these meds, and that's okay. My job is to work on fixing, okay, stay on those meds. Let's fix the underlying physiology. And then eventually let's get you off these meds because they've never been tested on people longer than 6 months, right? And I've got patients on these things for 20 years. So there's an underlying problem. That's the biggest thing. There's an underlying problem that is the need for those meds, not to mention some dependency issues and side effects and all that stuff. So there's a role, but you've got to fix the underlying problem. Okay. Okay. Jennifer says, is it possible to heal adrenal fatigue if I've had half of my left adrenal gland removed? Yeah, sure. You got two. One on each kidney. Well, you got 1.5. That's okay. So yeah, you can. When people lose their kidneys, oftentimes the adrenal gland goes with it, and so people have one adrenal gland. There's redundancy, so 100%. You can heal. Yeah, just got to do it the right way, right? Same advice, right? Same advice. Okay, Austin says, best way to balance blood sugar went on a low-fat diet for 4 weeks. Well, I don't recommend a low-fat diet. Oh, had an emergency gallbladder removal surgery Friday. Okay, you got to be on a low-fat diet then. Had been having 100+ grams of fat daily. Now has to stay under 40. Yeah, so you don't want to go. I mean, just when you get back to. All right, hold on. You're not my patient, Austin, so I can't tell you what to do. But what I generally recommend when we're transitioning diets is to go slowly, right? To go slowly. Your gallbladder is just a storage depot for the bile, right? The liver makes bile. So your liver is going to keep making bile, and it can make it in response to a fatty meal. It's just that you don't have the storage, right, where that gallbladder would squeeze out all that bile all at once. So as people change, post gallbladder surgery, I still will try to get fat into their diets. It's just, you just got to go slowly. You got to find that balance. You got to listen to your body. That's really the key. I harp on protein and fat quite a bit with regard to blood sugar control so if you've got adrenal problems, you need to be on a hypoglycemic diet, right? Intermittent fasting is the worst thing you could do if you have adrenal issues. The worst thing, right? All these detoxes, more of the vegetarian diets. God forbid you're listening to the medical medium who's putting people on all these detoxes. I have had so many people crash after doing those protocols, and then they come in front of me. Yeah, I tried this celery juice thing, and I just don't do that stuff. Don't do that stuff. Listen to experts with regard to this. Your adrenals control blood sugar. Every time your blood sugar drops, your adrenals have to fix that. That's a stress. So you need to be on a hypoglycemic diet. I didn't invent the hypoglycemic diet. It's all over. A hypoglycemic diet is small, frequent meals, more protein and fat, low sugar and carb. Protein and fat most easily comes in animals, so eat more of that. Fiber also helps. So protein, fat, and fiber. So Austin, I would say probably you're looking at more fiber, is my guess. Okay, Kristen says, my previous naturopath had me up to 1 tablespoon of Celtic sea salt on top of my salt with food. That's a pretty good dose of sea salt. I thought this was quite a lot of salt. Yeah, it is, especially if you do it too fast. A few months later, I started having episodes of sweating, clammy, unregulated body temperature. Finally pinpointed the Celtic sea salt, and a food sensitivity test showed positive for sea salt. I didn't have any issues with salt before. Started a high dose. Now I omitted it from my diet, starting to have the same issue with pink salt. If I add just a little too much, it's a fine line on what, and extremely frustrating. Do you have any suggestions? I miss Celtic salt. Yeah. So it sounds like it was too much too fast. I mean, I use Celtic sea salt in my practice. I do it a lot. And, but I start with a quarter teaspoon, right? And we kind of incrementally move our way forward. And I've never had a patient be sensitive to salt because of the way we do it that way. But we tend to be on the sensitive side anyway, as far as patients go. So if you're sensitive to it, you've got to pull back, right? And you've got to enter in just incrementally. Salt is not the only way, believe it or not, to get sodium up. You want to get the sodium in food, high sodium foods, right? If you can put salt in food and then it's tolerated, great, do it that way. But also just by strengthening your adrenals, you're going to improve the way your body holds on to sodium, right? So, the adrenal supports will do that. Licorice root does that. Adrenal cortex does that. Even pregnenolone can help with those hormones that help you to hold on to salt. I have the occasional patient that's, highly sensitive to salt, like from a blood pressure standpoint, can't do a whole lot of salt. That's okay. You just got to work around it and do it other ways. So there's workarounds, right? There's workarounds, but just, you got to listen to your body at this point, Kristen. And if it is an actual food allergy, the key is why are you so allergic, or why is your immune system so trigger happy towards those foods? And that's going to go towards this physiology too, right? So as we shift that physiology, that'll normalize too. So hang in there. That'll balance out, but definitely keep listening to your body. All right. Chris says, I've started waking about 3 or 4, tossing, turning. I did a lot a year ago. Introduced Serafos, and the first night I tossed all night. The third night slept good until 4, toss, turn. But okay. Does that sound normal? Can you explain what's going on in the body during? It seems pretty consistent for the last couple of years. Thank you. So, all right. The sleep is always a bit of an issue with regard to adrenal patients, right? Because your sleep-wake cycle is largely going to be controlled by the limbic system and your HPA axis. So we will see these issues. Serafos is only one, but it's one of the ways to modulate the HPA axis. And people's tolerance to Serafos varies, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. Again, we're on the sensitive side. So there are times we can use Serafos, and Serafos is like a slam dunk. It's like, oh, thanks for putting me on that. I've got, my anxiety's better. I'm sleeping better. Awesome. That's great, right? There are other times where the Serafos, you can have a paradoxical reaction to it, right? Where instead of calming people down, it actually overstimulates them. I mean, those are probably two ends of the spectrum, and most people are somewhere in the middle. So you've got to get a feel, right, for whatever any remedy does for you, and feel it out and figure out, how much is too much. Can I get the benefit? If I do too much, it backfires on me a little bit. So it is a bit of a sweet spot and kind of a fine line in figuring out, how much of each of these things we need. Again, sleep is somewhat complex in that, the Serafos primarily works at the hypothalamus and pituitary, but there's also adrenal hormones involved. There's also limbic system stuff involved. And, you should be able to target these things and balance that out. But it usually takes a combination of things. It's almost never like one particular thing, right? The sleep it's complex. So let's say if 100% of your sleep issue was low melatonin from stress, which happens, and you give somebody melatonin, they'll sleep like a baby. It's great. All right. I don't really see that patient, but that would be true. But maybe melatonin's 10% of the problem. All right. So keep taking melatonin. 10% is better than zero. And then if there's HPA axis stuff, right? Hypothalamus pituitary cerephos comes in. Maybe that's another 20 or 30%. Awesome. Maybe there's limbic system stuff. We got to target that, or we got to use omega-3s, or we got to do resveratrol, or we got to do, there's a variety of ways, because oftentimes it's, 5% of this, 20% of this, 15% of this, 30% of this, right? So we've got to target, listen to your body, make sure you get the blood sugar, snack before bed, that kind of stuff as well, to help to balance that out. Hang in there. Okay, Lane says, pardon me, in my healing journey, I started feeling really great. Uh-oh, that's one of the scariest things my patients can tell me. Doc, I'm feeling better. Because then they're always going to be tested, right? Now I can do more, so I do. And what happens? We do a little too much and we pay for it. It's what we do. So about 3 months ago, I cut out all grains in order to lower my inflammation. I almost immediately dropped about 10 pounds. My inflammation went down. I haven't gotten any rashes since then, but this month I've been back to being extremely fatigued, currently in a crash, heart's racing, not having so long. Okay. I'm afraid to add grains back because I don't want the inflammation to come back. Confused on what to do. Yeah, there's a lot there, Lane, and I don't know, your specifics, so it's hard for me to give you specific recommendations with regard to that. You've got to, you want to touch base with somebody. Reach out. You can always reach out to the patient coordinator, and we can talk about how we get after this. Listen to your body. All right. The biggest thing is to listen to your body and figure out what's specifically what you need. The diet varies. Even though I've got to put people on this hypoglycemic diet, even there's tons of variation within that aspect, right? So if I will tell you this: if I'm looking at the diet, it's first and foremost, if you've got adrenal problems, it's got to be control the blood sugar. It's got to be a hypoglycemic diet. I don't care about food sensitivities. I don't care about clean. I don't care if you're eating fast food 3 times a day. You got to eat a hypoglycemic diet, small, frequent meals, more protein, fat, low sugar, and carb. Then I'm going to look at food sensitivities. Are you sensitive to any foods, right? Because that'll definitely cause inflammation, right? With an allergy or a sensitivity. Now, that doesn't have to mean gluten, right? So gluten's a common sensitivity. If you eliminate grains, you eliminated gluten. But you also eliminated a bunch of other grains, which you may or may not be sensitive to. So as you're thinking about maybe adding gluten-containing grains, it might not be unreasonable to think about non-gluten grains, whole grains, even brown rice or something like that. Because not all those grains are going to be pro-inflammatory for everybody. Everybody's a little bit different. So just go slow, go methodical, be scientific about it, and you balance out. I tend to be a low-carb person, sometimes a very low carb for people. And sometimes I've gone too low carb, and I've had to add carbs back in. Got to listen to your body. Everybody's different. Okay, I've got a couple minutes. So Lauren says, I watched your video about it's hydrochloric acid. Understand how to determine if supplementation is needed or not. Here's my question. Once the stress response system is regulated, does the gut tend to heal so that it produces enough of its own hydrochloric acid, or do most of your clients have to stay on the supplement going on forward? Yeah, so you shouldn't need it forever. The body comes back, right? Shift this physiology, stop suppressing the vagus nerve. That turns on the hydrochloric acid production. So you kind of ramp up the hydrochloric acid, get to tolerance, stay there, fix the underlying problem. That's the key. And then you don't need it. I'll tell you a story. So I had a 6-week follow-up with one of my patients, this guy, Dan. And, we talked about all these recommendations in the beginning, gave him a couple kind of starter recommendations. Well, 6 weeks in, he did my recommendations on steroids. He doubled and tripled the stuff that I was recommending from a lifestyle perspective, right? Calming down, vagus nerve exercises, relaxation exercises, all that stuff. He was on 10 hydrochloric acid capsules per meal. His main complaint was his gut. It was all IBS stuff, gut stuff. 10 hydrochloric acid caps per meal. Within 2 weeks of doing that, he needed none. None. And all he did, I don't want to say all he did, because this is probably one of the most powerful things you could possibly do to your body for health and longevity. But all he did was shift his physiology. And his body responded like that. Now, he went after it. He went after it. I told him to do 20 minutes twice a day of like meditation, relaxation exercise. He did 3 hours. 3 hours. But within 2 weeks, symptoms were gone, right? So absolutely, you shift that physiology, you can fix that, and you shouldn't need that forever. And that is healing, right? That's what it's all about. The key with this, folks, is we've got to figure out what your puzzle looks like with regard to this particular problem, this condition. I'm not talking about this extraneous stuff. I'm not going to give you something for your anxiety. I'm not going to give you something for your depression or your weight or your blood pressure or your immune digestive. I'm talking about fixing this broken stress response. Figure out what that puzzle looks like. The only way I know, or let me say this, the most effective way I know to figure out what that puzzle looks like is with frequent contact with patients. I've been doing this a long time. I used to have people, they would come and stay. They'd come and stay at our guest house and stay with us for a couple weeks, couple months even. And we'd spend a lot of time with each other, right? They'd be in my office every day for a couple months, right? And they did really well. Problem is, I get it. Most people don't have the resources to come to us and get that level of care. So that's where the programs have been born, which work incredibly well. And they are the most efficient way to get people back on their feet. It's okay to need help and guidance. The information is great. And I want to clarify misconceptions. I want to give you all the information you can. But the application of that information, what to pay attention to, what can I let go of? What do I do when I have this? Like that takes guidance and care. And my coaches and I, we've got that in spades. So if you need help, know that it's okay and just reach out. Just reach out. You can have a complimentary call, talk to my patient coordinator. She can help to guide you, give you all the options. But regardless, join the Facebook group if you haven't already. Healing Adrenal Fatigue Holistically. It's a great place for resources. Check out YouTube, right? I've got tons of this information on YouTube. I would like to be that person, that resource that helps you get your life back. And you can do it. You can do it. But to do that, you've got to shift that physiology. That's the biggest thing, okay? All right. All my best. Take good care.